So I like to think about IgG as the memory, the backup that we have in the body for all the proteins that we've been exposed to. So if you eat strawberries very frequently and you do that type of testing, it's likely that you're going to have IgG that's going to be a little bit higher for that because it's something that you've been exposed to recently. Whereas the IgE is what really mediates an allergic reaction. But even then, just the blood testing is not conclusive.
Hello, welcome to episode 8, Navigating the Rocky Path of Medical Complications, part 2, and maybe we'll have part 3 and 4. We have a lot to cover. And you're joining on the journey to eating disorder expertise. My name is Jill Sakey, registered dietitian.
My name is Mateos, registered dietitian.
Well, we are going to continue with our medical series essentially and dig deep into more of the GI disturbances, perhaps allergies, intolerances to foods, things like that. So of course, we'll do a lot more on the back end with that. But let's kind of have a scenario. Client walks in the room. They've eliminated gluten. They've eliminated lactose. They've eliminated some nuts because they think, maybe they already had an allergy to nut allergies when they were younger. And now they've lost 20 to 30 pounds. And they are coming to you because they still cannot tolerate foods. They're having severe bloating, diarrhea, sometimes constipation, a lot of times diarrhea, nausea, just not feeling well with how they're doing. How do you handle that? How do you begin to address this? And especially this client doesn't happen to know they are in the throes of anorexia nervosa, for example, or maybe perhaps you find out in session that they're actually binging on gluten products because they haven't really allowed themselves to have it, and then they're purging now, yet they are attributing it to intolerances to gluten, and that's why they feel bloated and miserable after a binge because they've eliminated that food. So I don't know if you've ever seen a client like that in your sessions. It seems kind of odd. No, I see it all the time.
Times. A few times. And I've seen a lot of it in the context of ARFID as well. Mm-hmm. Because it comes with a bunch of stress and fears around food. And as we talk, it starts sounding more and more like, well, that sounds more disordered. Maybe there's a physiological aspect of it, but it's hard to tell what's really causing what at this point. It can be very confusing.
Mm-hmm. Especially when they come in with a list of foods that they need to avoid because they went to some holistic doctor who did some type of testing that tells them where they're sensitive to foods, and now they're having to eliminate even more foods, and they've gotten down to maybe 5 things they can eat daily, which tend to be just fruits and vegetables. And that's why they're losing all this weight.
Not even that. Yeah. I've had some that was like, I can't have oranges, I can't have strawberries, I can't have them. We need to do photosynthesis here, like
just put plants around you. Maybe you can feed each other through air itself. So yeah, those get really challenging. It's IBS in essence to where's their stress levels and, anxiety towards things. And they've gone to various medical providers trying to have testing, and they've gotten and they've even had GI series like upper and lower perhaps with nothing that they're seeing. And I think sometimes that's where the patient goes to another doctor, holistic, who looks at all their foods and what they're eliminating. And then that becomes another issue. And then they happen to find you, and now they're really frustrated, overwhelmed, and they know something's going on and there's a problem, yet sometimes they're not realizing the major problem again is malnutrition. And that's what's driving a lot of this. Yet there's a lot of fear and uncomfortableness because they've kept these foods out of their diet for a while, or perhaps they're binging and purging on it. And they see, really challenging issues after they eat it. And so you're trying to deal with fear and just untrustworthiness towards, I know there's a problem, yet no one's validating this and in helping me. So it can get really challenging. So I thought we would definitely dig into the little bit of the mechanics of perhaps food intolerances, which you will definitely see with malnutrition, whether a person is severely undernourished, whether a person has restricted a lot of foods because of texture or fear of swallowing or ARFID like symptoms, or maybe they had some type of issue with food and they eliminated it. And then that ends up developing, some type of eating disorder like binging and purging, where that now they're developed bulimia and they're having some other signs of kind of some body image issues and concerns too that have popped in because of their weight loss, which has shifted some brain chemistry in their mind. So we wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit more, give you some
Yeah.
feedback. So
Yeah, it can be very confusing for the clinician to hear all those things, and try to figure out what the way forward is. And I think you touched on something that I think is important, which is to validate that whatever they're feeling is real, the discomfort is real, because the stress around food and not being able to eat, all the doctor's appointments, the fear that it creates. Stress can cause inflammation in the intestine, and it will exacerbate, a lot of those symptoms, So, um, it 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 can be confusing when you start hearing those things in the room because of that fear. That I think that's the fear that I experience the most is whenever you're starting something like this, that fear of like making things worse.
yeah, and
uh,
you're trying to help, and you want your client to come back. I mean, you're running a business, you're in private practice. You don't want to, dismiss them and be, go right into something that you think is happening. You've got to build some rapport, and so I think that's key factor is validate that yes, definitely can see how you're struggling with this and building that rapport and connection so you can kind of hopefully unearth a little bit more of maybe what they're not realizing is there for sure.
yeah,
I was it was probably Mother's Day, a couple, maybe a year and a half or 2 years into COVID. And I love everything physiology, anatomy. And so Body Works happened to be at the Museum of Natural Sciences or something in Houston. And I'm like, we're going to that. And then the Butterfly Museum afterwards for Mother's Day. And my kids were like, yeah, okay. So they're not like science oriented in terms of like, physiology and things like that. And so Body Works is where they take actual some kind of process, and maybe you have the idea of knowledge of it. I don't know if you've seen that, Mateus, but you're seeing the muscle of the human, and it's somehow preserved. And they're doing, they might be someone was ice skating or someone had a disease, and so you saw it. You didn't see their the actual face was off, obviously, but there was no skin essentially, and you're just seeing the actual muscle, how it works, etc. And so we went in to this museum, and the first bit of it is a baby at different stages of development. Essentially, that truly was a preserved infant, and then or fetus, I guess. And then you walk in, and I remember seeing this brain with the vagus nerve and all the endings going all the way through the body. And I took a picture of it, and I still show clients that of like, yeah, look, this is the vagus nerve. It's attached to your brain and it goes into your, like there's a ton of them in the intestines and all of that. And then all these other places. And I just was so fascinated. I mean, we know this information, but to see it was really fascinating. And so not always clients appreciate seeing that. So I did find a like more cartoon creation of the vagus nerve and its and its endings, but yeah, if the brain's stressed out and overwhelmed, like how is that impacting your intestinal tract? So long story, but
yeah. No, I think it's fascinating too. When I was in undergrad in Brazil, we had anatomy classes that were with uh, corpses like that. They're treated with glycerin,
okay.
so it's like a waxy kind of
Yeah.
look to it versus the formaldehyde that stinks.
Yeah. That's what I remember in
Um,
college was that smell. It was always Friday and I couldn't eat dinner. It was my lab was from 3 to 5 on Fridays. And I'm like, I told my friends, I'm like, we're gonna have to eat at like 8 o'clock. I'm not. I smell like formaldehyde. I've seen dead cats. So anyway, that's horrible.
yeah. But it is interesting to see how it all connects. My professor was very difficult. He would like on the practical exams, he would put things like upside down and like you'd have to figure out what it was. And I had one that it was just like a little section of the body and it was flipped upside down and the little pin was on the little hole where the pancreas and the gallbladder connects into the intestine, and he wanted
Oh,
to know what the name of that thing was. And I was like literally upside down with my notepad, like, oh, I think I know what that is.
oh my gosh, I know. It's I mean the things we had to go through, but yeah, so you didn't have to smell the formaldehyde smell and all that. You just were it was kind of similar to whatever preservation they used in this Body Works museum kind of concept. So
Yeah, formaldehyde is actually cancerous, so
yeah,
they started trying to limit students' exposure to it.
there you go. All the things I don't know anymore. I'm sure I've been exposed plenty to it. So yeah. Yeah, that's it. That was interesting. I mean, to kind of see that and view it. My kids ran out of the museum. Like my husband, I was an hour and a half. Like I didn't realize they had gone. They had sat for an hour and a half outside the museum because they're like, we can't handle this. They were like green, pale. Okay, sorry. But anyway, but I'll try to we'll have some, I'll see if I can find an attachment somehow on the show notes. We can show a picture of it or attachment or something so people can really appreciate what the Vegas nerds look like. But yeah, so for sure, I mean that's something visual you can show a client, whether it's a cartoon more picture of it or an actual picture if you happen to find it, of like this is what's happening in your body. And when your brain is overwhelmed, our serotonin, what 80% of it's created in our stomach. So so there it's a constant communication between your brain and your stomach. So of course IBS symptoms are there, and your body is in that fight or flight. And so when it is, it doesn't want to digest much. It doesn't want to really process foods as effectively and efficiently. And so there has to be some other strategies besides food avoidance to kind of support them, because it, again, creates this whole essence of starvation and then just becomes a revolving door. And you've got to figure out how to get out of it for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so I've seen a lot of lactose intolerances for sure, a lot of allergies, and I did want to mention the essence of sometimes when you have kiddos that have a peanut or had a egg allergy young, they already have like a poor relationship with food. And so sometimes you kind of start to see eating disorders develop, which I can't remember where that research was from, but I remember hearing that they have a higher, um, is it proclivity, I guess, higher ability to develop an eating disorder later, with fears of food because they already had this avoidance concepts when they were younger, and it kind of imprinted, I guess, on their brain a little bit. But of course, also all of the various superfluous we were
Superfluous.
superfluous, testing that's done by especially non-evidence based, maybe a physician that just have gotten their hands on some allergy testing that really isn't legitimate. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that and kind of be aware of it. So, because a lot of times those particular tests I know show more of what they are eating a lot of, or they have been exposed to more so than an allergy. So, and they almost treat it as an allergy. Clients will completely avoid it and avoid cross contamination of foods. I'm like, that's not what intolerance is. Generally, you're going to have a larger volume of it. And it's also something that, if malnutrition is present, you're going to see it frequently, especially if you're avoiding that food for some time. So, yeah. Any other thoughts you might add?
I think that trying to sit with those things, being able to explain them to the client, to validate emotions and the stress that they're experiencing, and being able to provide a different perspective and a different path forward is going to be what we're going to talk about a little bit more on the other side of things.
Mhm.
And what makes a really big difference, when you get clients that come with a list of intolerances, sensitivities, and all
Mhm.
those things.
And I think I mentioned this before, education can be a form of validation. So, not trying to put on an expert hat, but more so of using education as a form of validation piece of it. It makes sense that this is happening, that and this could also be happening. And so when they start to see that they don't have to keep eliminating foods, and you start to cultivate hope and like, oh wow, or you're starting to really dig into its body image, and oh, I like the weight loss and I don't want to I don't want to gain weight, and you start to unpack what's really underneath through a form of education and validation. Sometimes that's, so just you want to be very informed about intolerances versus allergies, IBS stuff, which we're going to talk a lot more about, and give you that information, creating handouts and things like that. So you can provide them that information, but not coming from, I know more than you, because that's a lot of times what they're getting from the physician office. Like, essentially, they're going to tell them, or they leave thinking that it's all in my head, versus really they're actually having some physical symptoms of stuff. So, all right,
Yeah.
well, join us in the back end. We'll see you soon.